Yo, what's good guys? Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we're reacting to Group B when rallying got too fast. You guys know these cars, they're super quick moving. Definitely want to take one of them, but it's way too fast sometimes, you know, and I like it. I've been learning a lot about it, but I definitely want to drive one. If I would, I'd probably crash, but I'd definitely go for a spin. But yeah, if you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, let's watch.
The Audi Quattro, Lancia 037 and the Peugeot 205 T16, some of the most iconic names in rallying. Cars that pushed the limits of what was possible in a way that we haven't seen since. It was called Group B and is still held as the golden era of rallying. Group B was a class where manufacturers were allowed to go all out with almost unlimited power, crazy aerodynamics and new exotic materials. It brought about new technologies like four-wheel drive, semi-automatic gearboxes and clever turbocharging systems. However, it was only for the bravest of drivers. The hugely powerful cars needed a lot of manhandling to thread them through the tight, twisty stages, away from huge drops and dodging a sea of spectators. But how did this come about, and what can we learn from the crazy cars that won in the group?
No, I'm surprised that the spectators don't even get hit. Like, I'd lose it and just hit everybody by accident because it's just too much. It's, you know, it blinds your vision in a way.
Group B era.
Spectators gotta
Rallying
stop
went
this.
wild in the 80s. The FIA wanted to attract more manufacturers and so created a class that would give the designers pretty much free rein. No power limits, no regulations on boost, and whatever exotic materials you liked. Rally cars over the years have been largely based on road cars, with rules tightening and loosening on how close the relationship has to be between the stock car and the ones that actually race the stage. For example, in the Group A class, the manufacturers have to produce 5,000 road-going versions of the car before it is allowed to compete. In Group B, to lower the costs and interest manufacturers, they ruled that only 200 cars needed to be produced. Group B also allowed almost endless modifications to be made, meaning the rally cars were nothing like the road cars at all. This approach really worked, attracting many manufacturers to Group B, names like Lancia, Porsche, Peugeot, Audi, Toyota, Ford, as well as so many more. Lancia took the Drivers' Championship in the first year of Group B.
Look at all these guys, yo.
It was the last rear-wheel drive car to win in the WRC. It was incredibly light, using fiberglass and Kevlar for the body, and was powered by a mid-mounted 250 horsepower engine. It has much larger wings than many cars at the time, with a huge rear spoiler to stabilise the car at high speeds. It was supercharged to avoid turbo lag, and it was incredibly quick on the tarmac stages. However, it wasn't quite as quick on loose surfaces. So in stepped Audi with the Quattro, one of the most innovative rally cars of all time, a true game changer. It had an inline 5 engine with a very clever turbocharging system that produced over 450 brake horsepower. It had a small valve that kept the turbo spooled even when off throttle, meaning there was very little turbo lag, making the car quick out of the tight turns. The Audi also had a very aggressive aero kit with a huge spoiler at the front of the car and an
These guys, bro, they should have had Hellcats back here. Just imagine a wide body Hellcat. You just press it and go. I want to see a Hellcat on this course.
Bigger wing on the back. This was one of the first sophisticated uses of aerodynamics in rallying. Drivers said it made the car extremely stable at high speed. The insane power was put through a clever semi-automatic gearbox and drove all four wheels. It was the first car to use a four-wheel drive system effectively. Before this, many manufacturers stuck to rear-wheel drive as they thought the additional weight would outweigh any time gains from the extra traction. And yes, the Audi was very heavy, and the four-wheel drive system meant the weight was higher up than you would like in a rally car normally. But despite the compromised dynamics, it worked. The Audi had more power than the rest of the field, but could also use it more effectively, deploying more power even on surfaces like gravel, dirt and...
How old is this video? How old is this footage right here? If it's in the 19s, these guys are smart as hell. It's like a booster, that was cool. I like this car. Looks pretty old and broken up, but I like it for some reason. Classic.
Audi won its first race with the car and didn't really stop after that. They shaved seconds, if not minutes, off stage times. The Audi four-wheel drive system really changed the game in rallying.
I want to see the new
Audi
modified
dominance
version
didn't
of
last
this.
long. Peugeot came out with a car that would expose the weaknesses of the Quattro. They used a similar four-wheel drive system but packaged it very differently. Their secret was that they really nailed the car's dynamics. They built the car to look like the road-going 205, a small hatchback. It had a very short wheelbase, which generally makes cars more nimble at low speeds, with the trade-off.
Oh, what the heck is this this is in Kenya, isn't it? That was crazy.
Dynamics. They built the car to look like the road-going 205, a small hatchback. It had a very short wheelbase, which generally makes cars more nimble at low speeds, with the trade-off of less stability at high speeds. However, rally stages are often so tight and twisty that this strategy paid off for Peugeot. They also did everything they could to keep the weight central. They fitted a 1.8 litre engine in the middle of the car, although it didn't have the clever anti-lag system that the Audi did. So the drivers used an old trick to keep the turbo spooled up. They left foot braked for the corners while staying on the throttle. This kept the turbo spooled up and gave them immediate power on the exit. But what was really unusual about the 205 was the orientation they mounted the engine in. Normally, race cars have longitudinal mounted engines with the crank parallel with the direction of the car. However, Peugeot fitted it in a transverse orientation, and instead of mounting the gearbox below the engine like in the Audi, Peugeot mounted it to the side. This meant that the majority of the weight in the car was between the two axles and could be mounted lower, making the car much more nimble and responsive in the corners. Low centre of gravity means the car doesn't roll too much, and if it's in the centre of the chassis, the car is easier to rotate in the corners. The 205's weight distribution wasn't 50-50 though, it placed around 60% of the weight on the rear wheels.
Wait, what are the components to making these things faster? Because here it's basically no rules. But then at the same time, it's like, this has to be 1990 to 2000 something, because these are pretty old cars. So I'm wondering if they still do this now. I kind of want to see that, because imagine a modern car, you could add anything to it to make it quick. I'll probably steal a Tesla engine from my Toyota just to put it in, because why not? Not a Tesla engine, the battery, because Tesla's electric. Just put on anything that makes your car go quick. I want to see this nowadays. Nowadays it'd get way better if they did this. I hope they still do.
Terms, rearward weight distribution promotes oversteer and frontward weight distribution creates more understeer. This rearward bias meant the car was easier to turn in and control through the turns. You can really see this if you watch the Audi through the corners. The Audi was very front heavy and produced a lot of understeer. The drivers are trying to neutralise this with the throttle, but they have to correct the car several times through the corner. The Quattro understeers, then oversteers, then understeers again through a turn. The drivers really have to wrestle it through the corner. The Quattro was by no means an easy car to drive. Now look at the Peugeot. There is one smooth input on the steering and the car looks much more balanced and easy to drive. There is no wonder it was
Keep in mind, these are going 100 plus miles
as these drivers control the car when at crazy speeds on tight and twisty rally stages. Also not forgetting they are threading the car through a sea of spectators on the stage. But why are the fans allowed to be so close to the cars?
Right.
The stages are public roads, meaning anyone could go and spectate. However, it meant that many got extremely close to the cars. Back then, people did get hit, but it was considered to be part of the challenge for the drivers. They often kept it pinned and had to hope that the fans would get out the way in time. This guy even had to jump over a passing car. Many manufacturers understood that Peugeot's approach was the way to go, all producing smaller, short wheelbase cars with all the weight in the middle. MG created the Metro with a distinctive boxy shape and a huge front wing, and the Renault 5 took a similar approach too. However, it was Lancia that did it the best. They finally scrapped rear-wheel drive after being uncompetitive all year, so they created the Lancia Delta S4, a short wheelbase four-wheel drive monster. Firstly, they developed an engine
Wait, what's
with
this
a genius...
four-wheel drive he's talking about? They all have 4 wheels, obviously. What's four-wheel drive? What's that?
twin charging system. They fitted a supercharger to avoid the lag of a turbo, a bit like the Lancia 037. However, this created less power at high revs. As a supercharger is directly driven by the engine, it can provide boost at low revs, but saps more and more power as the revs climb. So what Lancia did was fit an additional turbocharger that would provide boost at high revs. So low-end boost was provided by the supercharger before cutting out and letting the turbo take over at higher revs. This meant the Delta S4 was amazingly powerful and had the grip to put it down onto the stage. It took many wins before eventually bringing the Group B era to a close. This era of rallying was amazing to watch. Incredibly fast cars and amazing drivers all pushing to the limits of what's possible. There were different winners every year and cars that looked remarkably different with incredible engineering. However, you can't ignore the fact that it was extremely dangerous. The cars were too powerful, difficult to drive, and not enough emphasis was put on the safety of drivers and spectators.
Or passengers.
The biggest issue was the minimum weight rule. Cars could weigh as little as 890 kilograms. So to be competitive, manufacturers would do anything they could to get this limit down. This created a breed of cars that were very fragile and not up to the job of protecting drivers in a crash. Many of the drivers explained that if this weight limit was higher, more strengthening could have been added to better protect the drivers in a crash. Several huge crashes happened. In Portugal, Santos crested a rise in his Ford RS200. He lost control and went off the course, horrifically injuring 31 spectators and killing 3. All the teams immediately pulled out of the rally and it left Group B hanging on by a thread. A few months later, the final blow came. Lancia's Henri Toivonen was the championship favourite when he lost control late in a fast turn. He was winning by a huge margin when he and his co-driver Sergio Cresto came flying off the road, heading down a steep hill. The impact ruptured the fuel tank, spilling fuel over the red-hot turbocharger, sending the car up in flames. After the incident, it was barely recognisable as a car and both Henry and Sergio were killed in the crash. This led to many manufacturers pulling out and the FIA ended the Group B class the following year. You should watch this video where I explain what it takes to modify a rally car to set the outright record at Pikes Peak.
Modify? Oh, it was all sweet till they died. Okay, I don't want to do that anymore. But yo, Group B is crazy. Yeah, Group B is something else. Modification, bro. Wow. I'm actually like, even though they died, I'm, RIP them, rest in peace, but I'm not against the idea of doing this again. I don't know why. Just a feeling. But then it was obviously too unsafe. People on the roads, they should have known that was gonna happen. But yeah, that weight limit, yeah, that's crazy. Hey, but the rallying today isn't too bad either. I'll stick to this if it'll be safer at least. But yeah, if you made it this far, thank you and have a nice day.